And just like a cynical old man, I was proven, unfortunately, just a tad right again, with both teams being the All Blacks and the Bach steamrolling through what was left of their respective opponents. Fortunately, it wasn't real much to glean, but let's get into it.
I need all the wins, yeah. Ain't no L's, I gotta get a no call to quits, yeah. Gotta keep on moving no matter how hard it gets.
Tusi Sala, back to Baker, Baker with the fit. Kurt Baker in for DC, and this may well do it old glory with the drive. The New Zealand Sevens legend, Kurt Baker with the cherry on top.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the On the Line Rugby podcast, a show brought to you by the Believe Sports Network. I'm your host, Mike Nagaishi, and welcome back. As I've said in the cold open, just a lot of things that I unfortunately wouldn't have liked, but semi-expected as the norm, and unfortunately this proves to be true again as just the All Blacks clean house. I think they were saying that a 6-year losing streak has been happening at Sky Stadium, and they managed to pull it off in Wellington. It's a different team that the All Blacks faced versus the one they faced in Sydney. Same thing for the All Blacks on defense. There were just a lot of different things that I think went right and wrong for both teams, and I think it leads very well into their playing philosophy under their respective coaches. Let's break it down. Unfortunately, for all my Bach fans, I wasn't able to watch the full game. Was able to watch some of the highlights that were available on YouTube. Did not really glean a lot that I probably wouldn't have expected outside of a couple things, but we'll break that down. Overall, I think that was a clinical performance by the Bach. But as for the All Blacks, I would say the line speed was relatively quiet for the All Blacks. In comparison to last week where they were screaming up into the faces of the Australian defense, which, did lead to a couple of tries in the late, and it actually kept them in the game, along with very little competition in and around the breakdown, unless it was a clear, and I mean clear, ability to win that turnover over. If you're looking at the entirety of the game, I think that makes sense. They're trying to play a little bit passive, keep a lot of the guys in space to stop a lot of the width breaks that happened last week. That makes a little bit of sense. And obviously completing at the breakdown. Australia, 90% of the time when they have guys over the ball, are going to hold that, unless it's a massive, massive man over it, like, say, a Scott Barrett or a Tamaiti Williams, who actually scored one of the biggest turnovers of the game and actually set up himself to get over the line in a later moment. If you're looking at that, really outside of those, or maybe a Sever Reese who's just quick to the breakdown, they're not going to win it. So I think doing this was a good thing. They were facing a different team, as I said, compared to last week. A lot more drilled into trying to go for the kicks and trying to get out of their own end zone through different means. And because of that, they were able to try to steam together a little bit more plays off of the breakdown through into space with a lot more width, but I don't think it went as well as they had hoped, just because they were not dedicating as much people to the breakdown, therefore not having as much space available. Forcing those one-on-one matchups were huge. I felt the All Blacks were making consistent mistakes under the high ball, either turning it over immediately after the kickoff or, tackling the guy in the air, as we saw with the player from Australia, just making a terrible, terrible take on trying to get that ball. I thought earlier that their defense was a little weird. I thought they were giving up a little too much options, and this led to this. The Wallabies just, on defense, both ends, kind of leaving just too much space in between their gaps and kind of forcing their one-on-ones they can't win. First half, it was the All Blacks. Second half, it was the Wallabies. Whether it was just, maybe 5 to 6 meters of space each. I was a little surprised at that, the amount of width they were giving. I'm sure it was to stop the wing, but you were just getting ripped apart left and right in the tight areas, whether it was the Will Jordan try, you're looking at the Caleb Clark try on the edge. You're looking at the Tamaiti Williams try late. Just this battle of the bulge tactic where they're almost coming up in a chevron style formation, where the single shooter is then covered by other guys who are either trying to wrap around the tackle to ensure that a clean turnover ball, or, maybe clean it up. It's not looking great on that front. And because of that, they were getting ripped open left and right. You looked at the way Will Jordan carved them up in a Jordy Nelson style. Again, it's pretty, what's the word? Automatic, I guess would be the right word for this, that this would happen. As we all know, single shooter, any shooter, if done properly, can work out, but it's a big big risk and reward maneuver for any team. So for the Wallabies to try to do this is not necessarily the greatest idea. I like their defense better from last week, where they kind of rushed up and almost semi blitz, semi cover. Their sliding effect were really great at knocking out a lot of the wing plays that I think they were trying to do, take away a lot of the big players in the offense. They were, I mean, it was like a sad excuse for almost a, hmm, what should I compare it to? Maybe sad excuse for a Welsh defense against the Springbok about 6 months ago for their Summer Nations tests where they came down to South Africa. But, I mean, it wasn't necessarily that great. Overall, I think through penalty and miscommunication, the All Blacks just played with their prey in this after the second half. If you're looking at the Caleb Clark try in the corner, you had guys, especially Fraser McWright, Angus Bell, just trying to get people to fly over to the edge. And unfortunately, I don't think anyone really noticed or maybe not cared. I think we all can agree that Australia has had some business decision mistakes that I think have cost them late. I think they've gotten rid of a lot of those guys like Mark Nawani Tawase. But, I think that culture may still stand, just given how bad the effort was to stop Clark over the edge. Now, I know Clark is the big man, and I know he's hard to stop under downhill ball. But if you're looking at it, I think you could have had a little bit more effort in that regard. Yeah, I mean, just through that or just terrible penalties. And, I think they put themselves at 6 penalties in the second half, just putting them in just bad position to really be able to succeed. It left for Bowden Barrett and Damien McKenzie towards the later end to basically just kick for the corner, play for the maul, play for scrum. And it just ended up becoming a bloodbath. And unfortunately, we didn't get the result that we wanted, I think, for any of our Wallaby fans out there. As we can tell, it's a little painful. I really did think that Joe Schmidt would really try to drill this team a little bit better heading to the All Blacks test. I really thought that this would mean something to him, given that a lot of these are technically, I guess, kind of now his boys. And it's just, I don't know what would happen. Maybe pick up Leon McDonald, who's still in the free agent pool, or somebody, because this team is not ready to face anybody in international competition that I thought would be worthy. I am severely disappointed. I really did think that this team could have made inroads with a lot of growth this year, but unfortunately, I don't think this team will be even in the top 10 once Autumn Nations hits. I think once they go to England and Wales and Ireland, they're going to get shellacked by whatever team they face, and it's not going to be fun. He's going to need to find some answers immediately in order to remedy the problem. And if you're not looking at that, you're looking at a severe lack of urgency from the player base and not from the staff. As for the Bach, obviously, as like I said, the highlights were very nasty, but I think there's nothing more to glean other than lots of relatively dirty play by the Pumas. I would argue that 2 of them should have been red, not 1. And you could, like, the Parliamentary hit probably could have been a red, just given the fact that he's leaning with his head out of the way in a high degree of danger in a cleanout where he's not going after the ball. You could argue that the cleanout in the air should have been a red. You could also argue that the hit in the corner that ended up being a red should have been a penalty try, but such is life. I really thought that they had 2 guys on the overlap, and those 2 guys could have easily beat the fullback in the corner. I think that was pretty obvious that would have happened. But such is life. Malcolm Marks to score the try, so ball don't lie. But I think this is more or less of an just clean, solid game by the Bach against a very physical Pumas team that arguably I really thought could have at least kept it a little bit closer, but such is life. For our one news segment of the day, I'm trying to segment this so I don't run out of topics. I would like to say that, I would really hope that Japan would come into this year. It was relatively big news over the last year and change since the World Cup that the NZR would open up the top leagues ability to come down into New Zealand to play, to kind of reinvigorate not only the rugby championship, but also the overall Super Rugby competition. Obviously same time zone, not a lot of differences, big funding, a lot of your former stars, it'd be huge the storylines wise for the press to just have these revenge games where cast-offs and bolters versus their old teams, and coaching legends like, Wayne Smith and the like really haunting their old halls. I think physicality would still be a question, just given the fact that League One really isn't necessarily known as a physical league, even compared to the MLR and Super Rugby Americas. I would say they're a little bit down there in terms of ability to just pound people into the dirt. Excuse me. Overall, I think that the Southern teams will not be used to the work rate that the Japanese teams have played with. They score fast and they score often. I think their average over the last 2 World Cups was about a little under 2 seconds before the ball came out from the breakdown. So something like that. So it was a big, big, big improvement. That 9 moves fast. Saito and those boys, they really clean up shop. I really think that Jamie Joseph had put in a good program. Eddie Jones did a good job of drilling that first, and now to continue again. Overall, I think if you're looking at will this continue, I think this would continue to bring huge audiences, not only for TV but just for local in person. You're looking for the growth of Japanese teams. Obviously, I think this would bring in a lot more money than you would expect. A lot of people, I'm sure, would be interested in watching the Japanese teams go off. Super squads with their different styles of play. I think that would not only grow the game on both ends, but you're looking at growing the game internationally. You're facing relatively in the URC similar competition, very physical, very high set piece form of play. You're looking at in the Americas, hodgepodge gumbo pot of nothing, as Dan would always say when I was working at USCfootball.com. It's not necessarily a cohesive identity, but it's a combination of everything. If you're looking at Super Rugby, it's very play to the corners, very high pace, more athletic style of play with the width. You're looking at Japan, a little bit of width, but very high in work rate, very high in the set piece when they need to be, but overall very downhill and in your face. I think they combine a great deal of things from all aspects of the world to improve their side, and I think they do it quite well and quite effectively with an identity. If you're looking at the tier 1, 2, and 3 rights, I think this will be huge because not only are you competing with Sky, your Stands of the world, maybe your ESPNs or Flows, but if you're looking at what Japan covers, Japan is mostly covered by, I believe, is Rugby Pass TV. Somewhat, I believe, by TRN 2 years ago when I was working with them. But if you're looking at the entirety of it, it's an open market. I mean, local coverage, I believe, is covered by the local radio stations, and that's it. They bring out huge crowds to the stadium. Mostly they watch, these all black bolters or these Australian bolters that just come over and play their golden years there. That draws big crowds, and their teams are relatively good. Especially with Suntory, you're looking at Panasonic, kind of Toyota, not really. You could argue Kobelco is kind of coming back, not really though. I think they were way more powerful like 4 or 5 years ago. If you're looking at the rest of their squads, I think it's a little bit bare. But obviously the more money you can funnel into these teams, the better they'll be. And if as soon as those is like these automotive makers or these TV makers really decide that this is going to be big ticket, they're going to start spending way more money and the checks will be blank. So you really can't complain just bringing them in. You're going to have to compete with a lot of world audiences to really fight this game over. I think having games in Japan, as they're already doing with this initiative with the Chiefs and the Blues to come over to Japan and face their old teams, big ticket money. We have already seen what that got, and it was huge. Now, did the Chiefs semi blow them out? Yeah, kind of. Did the Blues kind of keep it close, but basically kept it under control? Yes, but you would not know what this comes with as a season. So obviously the broadcasting intrigue would be huge. Newspapers would chomp at the bit to go get travel tickets to Japan for these passes. You're looking at it from just the NZR and Silver Lake deal funding, having this kind of deal with this kind of like blank check would really invigorate a lot. And I mean, a lot of these grassroots teams, whether it's the NPC or lower, you're looking at huge, huge gains in terms of money that they could see. Because once the Japanese start pumping in money, I don't think NZR is going to really care. I think obviously this is going to benefit a little bit of Australian rugby, but not really, given that what we've seen with their teams and their problems and organizational chaos of late. If you're looking at the other teams like Fiji and I guess Samoa and Tonga with Moana Pacifica, I think those will easily benefit them. Revenue sharing from this would be huge, allow them to get more better players. Ideally, I would like to see them get a Charles Piutau. Ideally, I would love to see them get a Semi Radradra, but I mean, unless they take a huge pay cut and maybe some organizational chaos, I really don't think that this will happen. But I think this will lead to a positive step to possibly getting there. Just overall, it's a lot of inroads that I think will be needed to do. And I think obviously you're embracing a little bit more of the Pacific playout. You're gonna brand yourself Super Rugby Pacific. You might as well throw in a couple Pacific teams in there as well. Now I know Samoa and Tonga and really Fiji are kind of their inclusion things, but I think that they really should expand more and get into these bigger teams like Japan. You're gonna add what, 6, 7 teams minimum. Their playoff seating would be huge if you think about it. Say I know Japan has about maybe 15 teams last I checked. Just in the Division 1 format, not really Division 2. If you're looking at the playoff format, you could really take off, say, the top 4 of each and just have them just bang it out. Maybe have a relegation bracket, kind of like the Championships Cup, and just have them go off in that, toilet bowl competition. Think of it like fantasy football. It works the same way, right? So I mean, it would be really interesting to really bring in the fans, I think, a little bit more instead of these stupid rule changes that they keep doing every year. Same thing with the NFL. I don't understand why they keep doing that. It's not benefiting anyone. Your viewership is dropping, your quality of play is dropping, but whatever. Obviously, the 20-minute red card thing for me is, I think, a huge no that I think should be really fixed. And that honestly, the yellow card to red card, I think, thing is relatively worth it. It really allows the booth to really dig into the play and make sure that it's warranted. But I think sometimes they do get the call wrong, but they're human, I guess. So, um, if you're looking at what this could do for the international play, for their big ticket, primetime audiences, I think this would really just nullify the Pacific nations and make Samoa, Tonga, Fiji play two and come into the competition. So they would have Japan, Samoa, Tonga, Fiji, uh, obviously Australia, and the All Blacks. So I think this would just leave America and Canada with their South American sides to kind of just play easy peasy. Obviously, I think that'll work better because they're, same time zone, relatively same play style. You could see how that works out. The America's already proving to have great rivalries with Chile, Uruguay, and semi Argentina, even though Argentina basically cleans house. Canada with the same thing. I think this is a great way to not only increase relations with their neighboring nations, but also to, really bring in the style of play that they want to go for. If Super Rugby, given that its relative drop off in prominence over late, has been consistent to the point where a lot of writers over the last 2 years have been really been stating that in the next decade it could be the next NPC, and that basically that's what it would be, and that the NPC wouldn't stay as a farm league, but would rather just be the whole arching teams. I don't know. Uh, I wouldn't be surprised if that does happen. I would definitely say that the broadcast quality and overall engrossment in fans, since the Silver League deal has not really improved. It has gone up in certain games. It has not gone up over the collective season. If you're looking at the overall arching, what's the word? Broadcasting experience, down. If you're looking at fan attendance outside of a couple games, down. And in terms of relevance, they're getting lower. A lot of people are going to watch the URC. They're going to wake up at this, especially for us Americans, like in the next 4 to 3 in the morning to watch games. Premiership is coming up despite the fact that they're losing teams, just because the quality of play is so good. Unless you're an All Black or Wallaby fan, you're not really watching Super Rugby. I watch it just because it's convenient to me, and also because New Zealand rugby is fun to watch. But it just gotta play the cards right. And I think you have a great league with a great amount of sides, great different sides of play, versus Samoa, Tonga, Fiji, the All Blacks and Wallabies, different styles, and especially with Japan's, they all play different games. And if you can bring those different sides together, I think this will make World Rugby a much better place. It'll bring a lot more guys from away to come home to play for their regional teams, to their international sides, to play revenge games against the All Blacks. Charles Piutau came back, but big star for them. So, it's I think a big draw for them to play for their home teams, and I think that you'll see a better product because of it. So hopefully they get with it in the next year or so. From what I'm seeing on not only online but also through talks with people on the ground, it is mostly a NZR kind of blockage, I guess you could say, between the talks between two sides to really integrate. I think once the ball gets rolling with Japan, the rest of the teams will follow. And while it would make the Pacific nations irrelevant, which I think was kind of already irrelevant because no one really watches it, you're looking at a solid group of teams that'll probably play to the death, and I think will lead to a good time for all fans. So, given that, I think that'll be it for today. It's a little short, but just the way I want it. So, see you next time. Peace.